Well, joining us now, the actress and comedian Francesca Martinez, who was born with cerebral palsy, stand-up comedian Steve Day, who is deaf. He lost his hearing when he was hit on the head at the age of 18. And the property developer Matthew Newbury, who lost his leg in a car accident at 15, and last year became the first amputee in Britain to have a bionic leg fitted. And I wanted to pick up, Steve, where Katie Razzle mentioned the contact she'd had from a woman whose children were autistic. And that's about non-visible disability. Now, technically, you are not visibly... You've got some fancy ear bits here.
Yeah, I know. It's... I'm a comedian, you see, and people disbelieve me when I say I am, because I can speak. In life, it's a blessing. Comedy, it's a curse. People don't... Someone come up to me once and said, "You're not deaf, you're wearing a suit." Which, there really wasn't any way to answer that without swearing.
But do you wear actually deliberately large deaf aids in order to draw attention to the fact that you are deaf?
I've got some hearing aids that are less conspicuous, but it makes people don't realise I am. It makes it much harder for me because I do need a bit more help. The larger, the better, I say.
Now you have an extremely fancy prosthetic, and the Olympics, Paralympics, demonstrated some incredible prosthetics. And one of the things I was wondering was, you know, these prosthetics have come in age. People actually fancy these things. They got pistons and valves and God knows what. Show us yours. I mean, where is it there?
There you go.
Yeah, well, it's a very fancy piece of plumbing, and it can go up a step with you thinking about it.
It's certainly a kind of third-generation device, and it does things that have never been done before in above-knee prosthetics. So I'm very, very lucky to have it. It's just obviously with a cost.
Yes, but the big question is whether a prosthetic per se is now more wearable, more kind of admissible than it was, let's say, 5 years ago.
It's certainly more in the public eye, isn't it? I mean, throughout the Paralympics, it was on every night of the week, wasn't it? Which is great.
But what has that done? I mean, are people interested in? Do people actually raise it? Because presumably, often people wouldn't mention the fact that they suspected you might have an artificial leg.
I've got a bit of a limp through trouble that I have with my right leg, which is actually more of a disablement to me than my left leg, believe it or not. So people will often sort of say to me, you know, "Matt, what is wrong with your leg?" And I'll say, "Well, I've got a false left leg and a damaged right leg." And at that point, sometimes they ask to see it, sometimes they don't. But probably, I think people have been more willing to talk about it over the last 3 or 4 months. Since
people expect you to be able to run really fast.
Well, yeah, sometimes, but I couldn't really run very fast before I lost my leg, so no change there really. But it's sort of, you know, I think people are just more willing to actually talk about it and accept it, and it's been normalised in a way, hasn't it? Like you said before.
Well, Francesca, I mean, you are more and more in the mainstream. I mean, I hear you on radio with other conventional comedians, and it's a fully accepted fact of life.
I think that's been the huge success of the Paralympics, that for once we had diversity celebrated across all the media and embraced and viewed as something positive and interesting.
Well, will it stick? Have we crossed a kind of Rubicon where this will go on and people will accept cerebral palsy, people will accept prosthetic, people will accept total deafness?
Well, I think it's a great step towards changing attitudes and also towards getting away from those scary labels which often dehumanise disabled people. The Paralympics showed disabled people as human beings. I believe we're all different, and different is normal. I do believe the media has to be careful not to polarise disabled people as inspirational athletes or work-shy benefit cheats. And
you can go too far the other way.
Yeah, I think it has to find a way of representing difference as a natural and normal part of life.
Do you think you are being treated more normally than you were when you were 19, 20?
I think so. It's live stand-up comedy. It's a truthful environment, and people's reaction to me since the Paralympics, and I noticed it even from the first week of the Paralympics, was easier to sell the idea of a deaf comedian. Right? Previously, I mean, I've been a comedian.
We didn't have any deaf people doing the hurdles.
No, there was nobody in it. Deafness wasn't in the Paralympics, even though I've got quite a few bookings on the strength of the Paralympics, and I've not told them about that until I got paid. But audiences have been less worried about a deaf comedian. I used to see the look on the face that said, "Oh God, he's going to dribble" or something. You always got that. And
now, why would people think deaf people dribble?
Well, it's just a general lack of knowledge about disability in general. To think, "Oh God, someone in a wheelchair is going to be a pain in some way. How do I react? He's a deaf bloke. What do I do? Do I have to sign to him? What do I do? You know, will he accept laughter? You know?" And people are more at ease, I think. But then it shows up the dichotomy, though. People in general, disabled people's lives are quite tough at the moment.
Have you always been very open about your disability, or have you tried to be as normal as possible, and now do you feel somewhat liberated?
Yeah, I guess early on I found it difficult to accept it, but it's difficult to tell the difference between what was down to other people and what was down to me, because I was young and it was, you know, as I'm sure it's the same for
and
Steve.
traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been an element of me getting used to my own being disabled and not being embarrassed about using the word, and also I think the world has come to terms with things more, so it's easier to you know.
But
to not have to
is
hide
it too crude a question to ask whether this is the best time in the best country to be somebody with a disability?
I think it's got to be, hasn't it? With the amount of amazing coverage that the Paralympics got, I think it's got to be, hasn't it?
I think the Paralympics has changed attitudes and set a great ball rolling. But I think we also have to look at the context of the reality of many people's lives. You know, the fact is that right now, a third of disabled people still live in poverty. Half of adults are still unemployed. Disability hate crime is at record levels. The government is closing their independent living fund and also slashing much needed benefits. And people around the country are committing suicide from losing their benefits.
Well,
so I think that reveals the stark reality. And I think to truly honour the Paralympics, we need to acknowledge and fight for the vital framework that allows disabled people to live their full lives.
That's what I think. At no time has it been better in the community that you know, disabled people more accepted than ever, but yet when it comes to access to services and so on, been so difficult for disabled people, ATOS evaluations and all that sort of thing, what Francesca was talking about. That moment when George Osborne was booed brought into sharp focus exactly that. There were great Paralympians and politicians.
I was so proud of the crowd at that point.
Well, we must leave it there, but Steve, Matthew and Francesca, thank you very much indeed. Krishnan.